I thought I was going to a simple family celebration, my nephew's graduation party. I even dressed in blue, hoping my mother might finally look at me with pride instead of pity. But within hours, that house turned into a nightmare. My 10-year-old daughter was accused of stealing, my mother lost control, and what happened next changed everything I ever believed about family. Before we dive into this story, tell me, where are you watching from, and is it daylight or dark where you are right now? Hi, my name is Tiffany, and I'm 33 years old. People say time heals everything, but in my case, time only built thicker walls. Every year that passed between me and my mother felt like another brick laid between us, one I could never tear down. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, with my husband Jason, our 10-year-old daughter Mia, and his parents, Barbara and Charles. Jason's parents have hearts like sunlight, warm, forgiving, and steady. They treat me like family, not like an obligation. It's everything I wish my own parents had ever done. My mother, Susan, was never cruel in obvious ways. She didn't scream. She dismissed. She didn't punish. She compared. My brother Eric was her pride, her shining proof that she'd done something right in life. And I was the leftover effort, the one who didn't turn out like she wanted. When I was little, I used to wait for her eyes to find me the way they found Eric, full of pride, full of love. But they never did. And somehow, even as an adult, I still kept hoping. Jason knows what my parents are like, though he rarely says anything. He just squeezes my hand whenever their names come up, as if reminding me that not every family breaks you. Sometimes that small gesture is all that keeps me steady. Tonight, while setting the dinner table, Barbara asked casually, "Have you spoken to your mom lately?" I froze for a second.
No.
Not since Christmas. She gave me a sympathetic look. It's been months, dear. Maybe one day things will soften. I smiled politely, though deep inside I knew some things don't soften. They just harden quietly. Mia came running into the kitchen, her sketchbook clutched against her chest.
Mom, look.
I finished my drawing. Her big brown eyes were glowing with the same excitement I used to have as a child, before disappointment became a habit. I bent down and kissed her forehead. That's beautiful, sweetheart. You're getting better every day. Barbara looked at her fondly. She's got real talent, Tiffany. Maybe she gets it from you. I wanted to laugh at that. Me talented? My mother had once told me that creativity is just another word for being lazy. I'd stopped painting after that. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone by the window. Phoenix's evening heat still hung in the air. The desert winds outside carried dust that shimmered under the streetlight. I could see my reflection in the glass. Older, quieter, but not at peace. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed across the screen. Graduation party for Brandon this Saturday at 6 p.m. Hope you can make it. Eric and Madison. For a moment, I thought it was a mistake. Why would my brother invite me? We hadn't spoken properly in years. I stared at the message for a long time. Jason was asleep, so I whispered the words into the silence. They actually want me there. A part of me wanted to delete it. But another part, the one that still believed families could fix themselves, felt something stir. Maybe this was it. Maybe after all these years, we could finally sit in the same room without feeling like strangers. I saved the message and put the phone down. But my heart didn't calm. It raced with an old, dangerous hope. The next morning over breakfast, I told Barbara and Charles about it. Barbara's eyes widened slightly. Well, that's surprising. Are you thinking of going? I don't know, I admitted. Mom and I were not exactly peaceful. Charles folded his newspaper. If they invited you, they must want to make amends. Sometimes people surprise us. I wanted to believe him. But the truth was, my mother never did anything without reason. If she wanted me there, it was for something else. Still, a small voice whispered inside me, what if this is the moment that changes everything? That night, as I tucked Mia into bed, she looked up at me sleepily. Mom, are we going to Grandma Susan soon? Her innocent question twisted something inside me. She'd never seen my mother's anger, only her politeness over short phone calls. She had no idea what that woman could do when she decided you weren't worth love. Yes, I whispered after a pause. We're going this weekend. Mia smiled. I'll make a drawing for her. I kissed her cheek, hiding the fear behind my smile. That's sweet, honey. When the lights went out, I sat beside her bed for a long time, listening to her breathing. I wanted to believe that this time would be different, that we wouldn't walk into another storm disguised as a family dinner. But deep down, I already felt the shift in the air, like the calm before a desert monsoon. And somewhere inside me, a quiet voice warned. Some invitations aren't made to reconcile, they're made to break you all over again. By Friday morning, Phoenix felt heavier than usual. Maybe it was just the dry heat pressing through the windows, or maybe it was the weight of something I couldn't name, the kind that sits behind your ribs and waits. Barbara stood at the kitchen counter, arranging dessert trays. You should wear that blue dress, she said. The one with the silver buttons. It makes you look confident. I smiled faintly. Confident might be a stretch. Charles walked in with his coffee mug. Your brother's party, huh? Big event. Maybe this is a good sign, Tiffany. Maybe, I murmured, though my chest tightened with doubt. Jason was already dressed for work, adjusting his tie. I'm sorry, sweetheart, he said, leaning over to kiss my forehead. That meeting's been on the calendar for weeks. I'll try to join if it ends early. It's okay, I told him, though a small part of me wished he'd be there. Jason had a calm that could silence chaos, and God, I might need that tonight. Barbara and Charles insisted they'd come along. You shouldn't have to face that family alone, Barbara said. I was grateful and also a little scared. I didn't want my in-laws to see the kind of venom my mother could spit with a smile. By late afternoon, the car was packed. Mia sat in the back seat, humming quietly, clutching a small envelope with her drawing inside. What's that, sweetheart? I asked. It's a surprise, she said. For Grandma Susan. My throat tightened. That's very kind of you. She smiled, completely unaware of the history we were driving toward. Eric's house stood on the northern edge of Phoenix, big, beige, and perfect. When we pulled up, the driveway was filled with cars, laughter spilling out through the open windows. Balloons floated over the lawn that read, Congrats, Brandon. Madison greeted everyone at the door, wearing a polished smile and a pearl necklace that glimmered like armor. When she saw us, her eyes flickered. A brief, sharp glance that reminded me this invitation wasn't kindness, it was control. Tiffany, she exclaimed, air-kissing my cheek. You look lovely. Thanks, I replied, forcing the same smile. Inside, the house looked like something out of a magazine. A buffet table stretched across the dining area, polished silver dishes filled with roast beef, mashed potatoes, and a pot of steaming soup. Brandon's graduation cap sat beside a framed photo of him holding his diploma. Wow, Barbara whispered. They went all out. Madison always does, I said quietly. I could feel Susan's eyes on me long before she spoke. She stood near the couch, her posture stiff, her expression perfectly neutral. My father, Martin, hovered beside her, the same quiet shadow he'd always been. Well, Susan said finally, you made it. Yes, Mom. Thank you for inviting us. Her lips curved, but not in warmth. It's Brandon's big night. I didn't want unnecessary drama. The sting was sharp but familiar. I just nodded. As the evening went on, I tried to stay near Barbara and Charles. Mia played with balloons and talked to other kids. For a few moments, I almost believed this might end peacefully. Then Madison's voice rose over the crowd. Everyone, time for gifts. One by one, people placed their presents on the table. When Brandon's aunt handed over a white box tied with gold ribbon, she said, Open this one last. It's for my husband. Something special. Brandon tore the ribbon open and gasped. An iPhone. No way. The guests clapped and cheered, phones flashing as photos were taken. The brand new device gleamed under the lights, still sealed in its package. I clapped too, smiling faintly, unaware that this small, innocent moment, that simple gift, was about to turn into the spark that would burn everything down. The sun was low when we reached Eric's neighborhood, the kind of Arizona evening where the light turns everything gold. From the car window, I could see the house glowing with string lights and laughter spilling through the open door. Barbara whispered, "It looks beautiful." "It does," I said softly, though my stomach felt like a knot tightening with every step. As soon as we entered, Madison appeared like a hostess on a stage, the picture of perfection. "Tiffany, you made it," she said, voice sweet but sharp at the edges. "Oh, and this must be little Mia. You've grown so much." Mia smiled shyly. "Hi, Aunt Madison." Barbara greeted her politely, and Charles shook Eric's hand. My brother looked exactly the same, confident, charming, and completely unaware of how invisible he made everyone else feel. Mom stood near the fireplace, talking to guests as though she were the queen of Phoenix herself. Her pearls gleamed under the chandelier. When she saw me, her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, then returned, brittle as glass. "Tiffany, you're here." "I didn't want to miss Brandon's big day," I said. "Well," she replied, "try not to make it about yourself." Barbara's hand brushed my arm gently, a silent warning not to react. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. The party was loud, the kind of chaos that hides tension behind chatter. Brandon moved through the guests proudly, accepting congratulations. He looked happy. He deserved that much at least. Mia stayed near me, her sketchbook clutched in her arms. "Mom," she whispered, "can I give Grandma Susan my drawing now?" "Maybe after dinner, sweetheart," I said. "Let's wait until everyone's calm." Dinner was a buffet, polished silver trays steaming with roast, mashed potatoes, and a large pot of tomato soup. The smell was warm and comforting, masking the bitterness in the air. Madison floated between tables, laughing too loudly, her eyes flicking toward me every few seconds. I could feel her watching, waiting. At one point, Barbara leaned close and said quietly, "Your mother hasn't changed." "I didn't expect her to," I whispered back. Charles nodded toward Jason's empty chair. "Your husband would have handled this better." "Yeah," I said with a weak smile. "He's good at keeping peace. I just hope we won't need him tonight." For a little while, it seemed as if things might stay calm. People toasted to Brandon's success. Susan made a small speech about family pride. I clapped politely, even when her gaze landed on me as she said, "Some children bring honor to their parents, and some just bring trouble." Barbara stiffened beside me. Mia looked up, confused. "Why did Grandma say that, Mom?" "Don't worry, honey," I whispered. "She didn't mean you." But inside, I knew exactly what Susan meant. Later, as the laughter returned, Madison stood near the gift table, stacking boxes neatly. "Everyone, we're opening Brandon's gifts," she announced. People gathered around, cheering as Brandon unwrapped books, a wallet, and a graduation card stuffed with cash. Finally, Madison picked up the last gift, the gold ribbon box. "This one's special," she said. "From my sister and her husband." Brandon peeled the wrapping carefully and lifted the lid.
Whoa.
"It's an iPhone." "Thank you." Madison clapped proudly, smiling for the photos. The phone, still in its sealed box, was set back on the gift table among the ribbons and cards. Mia's eyes sparkled. "Wow, that's so cool." "Yes, it is," I said, watching the phone glitter under the lights, unaware it was about to become a weapon in someone's game. As music played and guests mingled, I noticed Madison's expression shift, something sly and calculating passing behind her smile. She glanced once at the table, then at me. A cold feeling crawled up my spine. Barbara noticed too. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Nothing," I said quickly, though my voice didn't sound like mine. In the distance, Susan was laughing with a group of guests. Eric poured himself a drink. Brandon disappeared toward the backyard. Everything looked normal, too normal. The kind of quiet that comes right before something breaks. And somewhere inside me, a voice whispered the same warning I'd felt the night before. "You shouldn't have come, Tiffany. Not tonight." The evening had started to settle into an uneasy calm. Plates clattered, Laughter filled the house again, and the clink of glasses tried to hide the undercurrent of tension that only I seemed to feel. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd been wrong. Maybe tonight really was just about family and celebration. Then Madison's voice sliced through the music. Everyone wait. Has anyone seen Brandon's iPhone? The chatter stopped. Heads turned. Madison's expression was tight, rehearsed almost, as she pretended to look around. Brandon frowned. It was right here, Mom. On the table. Madison moved toward the gift area, her movements a little too deliberate. I just saw it a few minutes ago. Now it's gone. I felt my heart sink. Not because of the phone, but because I suddenly understood what was coming. Susan stood up from her chair like she'd been waiting for this moment. Well, that's interesting, she said sharply. Her eyes darted across the room until they landed on Mia. Wasn't she standing near that table earlier? I felt my blood freeze. Barbara's voice cut in immediately. Susan, that's a child you're talking about. But Susan ignored her. Children copy what they see. Maybe Tiffany never taught her the difference between curiosity and theft. Mom, I said, my voice shaking, don't do this. Madison stepped forward, feigning concern. Let's not jump to conclusions, she said, pretending to play the peacemaker. But Mia was over there right before I noticed it missing. Mia's small voice trembled. I didn't touch anything, Mommy. I dropped to my knees beside her. I know, sweetheart. I know you didn't. Eric finally spoke, trying to sound rational. Let's just look for it before accusing anyone. But his mother's words had already poisoned the air. Guests whispered, glancing our way with a kind of sympathy that felt like pity. Barbara rose to her feet. Enough. Let's check properly. No one leaves until we find it. Charles nodded in agreement and told the guests to give them space. This will be sorted out, he said firmly. Madison crossed her arms, eyes glinting. Maybe we should check her bag, she said, pointing toward Mia's small pink purse on the sofa. That's enough, I snapped, standing up. You're not searching my daughter like she's some criminal. Susan stepped closer, her voice low but venomous. You're defending her just like you've defended your own mistakes all your life. Like mother, like daughter. I could feel every muscle in my body trembling. She's 10 years old, I said through clenched teeth. 10. The room was silent except for Mia's soft sobbing. Then Barbara spoke again. Let's all calm down before. But Susan wasn't listening anymore. Her face had turned red with anger, and in one sharp motion, she grabbed the large pot of hot soup from the buffet table. Everything slowed. I saw her lift it, her hand shaking, her eyes full of rage. She wasn't thinking. She just wanted to hurt. MOM no. I screamed, lunging forward. Mia flinched and stumbled back as Susan tilted the pot. The soup splashed outward. Most of it hit the floor, but some spilled across Mia's shoulder and arm. She cried out, clutching her skin as steam rose into the air. The smell of tomato and heat filled the room. Barbara and Charles rushed forward instantly. Barbara grabbed napkins and pressed them gently against Mia's arm while Charles shouted, "Someone call 911." I was shaking so hard I could barely breathe. I pulled Mia close, whispering, "It's okay, baby, it's okay, Mommy's here." Susan stood frozen, the empty pot still in her hands, her face pale. Madison backed away, pretending to be shocked. "You could have killed her," Barbara shouted. "What is wrong with you?" "I didn't mean she stole," Susan stammered. "She didn't steal anything," I yelled, tears spilling down my face. "You've hated me my whole life, and now you've turned it on my child." The room erupted into chaos. Guests murmured, phones came out. Someone opened the door for air. Charles called out, "The police are on their way." When Susan tried to step closer, Barbara blocked her path. "Don't you dare touch that child." Within minutes, sirens wailed outside. Red and blue lights flashed through the window. 2 police officers and paramedics entered quickly. One of the officers, a tall woman, looked around and said firmly, "Everyone stay where you are." The paramedics rushed to Mia. They gently examined her arm and shoulder, cooling the burns with water and sterile cloths. "She's lucky," one said softly. Mostly first-degree burns. I nodded weakly, my voice barely a whisper. Thank God. Meanwhile, the officers began questioning people. Who made the call?
I did, Charles said.
He pointed at Susan, threw hot soup on the little girl. Susan tried to protest. It was an accident. The child stole my grandson's phone. The officer turned to her. Ma'am, you need to lower your voice. Where's the phone now? Madison stepped forward, her tone trembling just enough to sound innocent. We haven't found it yet. The officer narrowed her eyes. Then we'll start looking. Everyone stay here. They began a quick but thorough search, checking under tables and near the buffet. A young guest, one of Madison's cousins, hesitated, then spoke up. Officer? I think I saw something. Before all this happened, Madison was by that plant near the wall. She looked like she was hiding something. Madison froze. That's ridiculous. But the officer was already walking toward the plant. She reached behind it, and when her hand came back out, she was holding a sealed white box with a gold ribbon. The iPhone. The entire room went silent. Madison's face turned chalk white. I don't know how. The officer raised a hand. Save it. You're both coming with us. Tears of shock filled my eyes. I held Mia close as Barbara whispered, It's over now, sweetheart. It's over. Susan tried to reach out, but the officer stepped between us. Ma'am, you're under arrest for assaulting a minor. Madison began to cry, confessing through trembling lips. It was me. I hid the phone. I just wanted to humiliate her. The officer cuffed her too. You succeeded in humiliating yourself. As the women were led outside, Barbara looked at me, her voice steady but cold. You and your daughter are coming home with us. You're safe now. I nodded numbly, clutching Mia's tiny hand as the flashing lights painted the walls around us. Red for danger, blue for justice, and somewhere in between, the faint light of relief that it was finally over. The police car lights still flickered through the curtains when I finally sat down. The chaos of the party had drained away, leaving only the sound of Mia's small sobs and Barbara's gentle voice trying to calm her. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Everything had happened so fast. The accusation, the attack, the arrests. A paramedic knelt beside Mia again, carefully checking the bandages they'd wrapped around her arm. She's going to be okay, he said softly. It looks worse than it is. We'll take her to the hospital to be safe. Thank you, I whispered, my throat tight. Barbara stood beside me, trembling with anger. Your mother threw boiling soup at her own granddaughter, she said. I've seen terrible things, but this. She stopped herself, pressing a hand to her mouth. Mia clung to me, her voice barely audible. Mommy, did I do something bad? I pulled her close, fighting back tears.
No, sweetheart.
You did nothing wrong. None of this is your fault. Charles spoke to the police officer near the door. We'll follow the ambulance, he said. My son, Jason, he's her father. I'll call him. The officer nodded. We'll need statements from everyone, sir. We'll be in touch soon. Outside, the desert night was heavy and still. The house that had once glowed with celebration now looked like a crime scene, guests whispering in clusters, flashing lights reflecting off the windows, and my mother standing on the porch in handcuffs, her face twisted in disbelief. I carried Mia out to the ambulance. The paramedic smiled gently as he helped us inside. Barbara and Charles climbed into their car to follow behind. As the doors closed, I caught one last glimpse of Madison, crying as officers guided her toward another car. Even now, she looked more worried about her image than her actions. The ambulance smelled faintly of antiseptic and steel. Mia lay on the stretcher, her small hand gripping mine. Mommy, she whispered, Grandma was really mad at me. I brushed her hair back gently. Sometimes people hurt others because they're angry at themselves, I said softly. But anger never makes them right. At the hospital, the fluorescent lights felt harsh against my eyes. Nurses hurried through the corridors as we were led to a small treatment room. The doctor examined Mia's arm carefully. First-degree burns, he confirmed. She'll be sore for a few days, but there shouldn't be scarring. Barbara exhaled in relief. Thank God. While the doctor treated her, Jason arrived, still in his work suit, his tie loosened, panic written all over his face. Tiffany, he gasped, rushing toward me. What happened? Charles called, but I didn't believe him. I could barely speak. My voice cracked as I said, She threw soup at Mia. Because of a lie. Because Madison hid that stupid phone. Jason's face hardened, fury and disbelief fighting for space. He turned to the doctor. Is my daughter okay? She'll recover fully, the doctor assured him. Jason knelt beside Mia, kissing her forehead. You're so brave, sweetheart, he whispered. Daddy's here now. When the nurse finally left, Barbara told him everything, the accusation, the chaos, the police finding the phone. Jason listened silently, his jaw tight. She accused a child, Barbara said bitterly. And Susan went along with it. They both deserve what's coming. Jason looked at me. You called the police yourself? Yes, I said, my voice steadying. And I'd do it again.
He reached for my hand.
Good. You did the right thing. The next morning, the detective assigned to the case, Officer Grant, visited the hospital to take official statements. He was calm but firm, the kind of man who'd seen too much nonsense in his career. I just need to confirm, he said, notebook in hand. The iPhone was found behind a potted plant, correct? Yes, Charles replied. One of the guests saw Madison hiding something there earlier. Grant nodded. That matches the other witness statement. She admitted it on scene, too. Jason frowned. And my mother-in-law? She'll be facing a felony assault charge, Grant said matter-of-factly. Child endangerment, battery, and public disturbance. Madison's being charged with false reporting and conspiracy. The evidence is solid. Witnesses, physical injury, and the recovered item. I swallowed hard. So it's really over? Grant gave me a sympathetic look. As over as it can be. The law will handle it from here. When he left, I sank back into the chair, exhausted. I looked at Mia, who was asleep with her arm wrapped gently in gauze. Barbara touched my shoulder. You're strong, Tiffany. You didn't just protect your daughter tonight. You stood up to years of cruelty. I just wish it hadn't come to this, I said quietly. I never wanted to see my mom in handcuffs. She made that choice herself, Barbara replied. Now you make yours to move on. Jason stood by the window, staring out at the Phoenix skyline. You know what's strange, he said softly. All these years, you thought your mother hated you. But tonight she proved it to herself too. Maybe that's what it took for her mask to break. His words hurt, but they were true. 2 days later, Mia was discharged. The nurses gave her a soft sling and told us to keep the burn clean. She smiled weakly when we left, holding Barbara's hand. At home, the quiet felt unreal. The news had already spread, a family scandal whispered about through Phoenix's tight social circles. But I didn't care anymore. I was done being silent to protect others. That evening, Mia sat beside me on the couch, sketching in her notebook. She drew a picture of a woman shielding a child from a red splash of paint. What's that, sweetheart? I asked. She looked up at me. It's you, Mommy.
You protected me.
Tears filled my eyes. Always, I whispered. No matter what happens. Outside, the Arizona sun dipped below the desert hills, painting the sky orange and gold, the same colors as the soup that had once burned, now softened by distance and healing. For the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in my parents' house, or in their presence, or in their voices. Peace. The courtroom felt colder than I'd imagined. Its silence was heavy, the kind that presses against your chest until you forget to breathe. Rows of people sat behind us, reporters, a few neighbors, even distant relatives pretending to care. But I only saw one person, my mother, sitting at the defense table beside Madison. She looked smaller now, older somehow, her posture stiff but fragile. Madison, on the other hand, couldn't stop shaking her leg, her nails tapping nervously against the table. I wondered if either of them had any idea how much damage they'd done, not just to me, but to a 10-year-old girl who still woke up some nights crying from the memory of boiling soup and shouting voices. Jason squeezed my hand gently. Just breathe, he whispered. It's almost over. Our attorney spoke calmly as he described everything: the false accusation, the planted phone, the attack. Photos of Mia's burns appeared on the screen. I turned away. I couldn't look. When it was my turn to testify, my knees trembled as I stood. The judge, Judge Miller, nodded for me to begin. I went to that party hoping to fix things, I said. I thought maybe my family could finally treat me like I belonged. Instead, my mother poured hot soup on my daughter. Not because she was angry at her, but because she's always been angry at me. Madison's attorney objected weakly, but the judge overruled. I continued, my voice steadier now. She believed her daughter, my niece, had stolen a phone. But that phone wasn't stolen. Madison hid it herself, just to humiliate me in front of everyone. To her, it was a game. To my daughter, it was trauma. I looked straight at Madison. Her eyes darted away. The prosecutor took over from there, presenting witness statements. Barbara and Charles both testified, their voices steady with restrained fury. Even Brandon, Madison's own son, broke down in tears when he said, I just wanted to graduate. I didn't want anyone to get hurt. The evidence was undeniable. The iPhone had fingerprints that matched Madison's. Several guests confirmed seeing her near the potted plant before the phone was found. And Susan had admitted in her first interview that she acted out of anger. When it was time for the defense, Madison tried to cry, saying she'd only wanted to teach Tiffany humility. My mother said almost nothing, just sat there, eyes vacant, refusing to look at me. After closing arguments, the courtroom went silent as Judge Miller adjusted his glasses. His voice was calm, but firm when he spoke. Both defendants have shown extreme cruelty and recklessness. What happened that evening was not a mistake. It was malice disguised as family discipline. He turned to Madison first. You, Mrs. Madison Harris, are guilty of false accusation, manipulation, and conspiracy. You will serve 2 years in state prison and pay restitution for emotional and medical damages. Madison broke into sobs, her head dropping into her hands. Then the judge looked at my mother. The entire room seemed to hold its breath. And you, Mrs. Susan Blake, are guilty of assault and child endangerment. You will serve 5 years in state prison and are hereby prohibited from any contact with your daughter or granddaughter under the state's protective order. The sound of the gavel hitting the desk echoed like thunder. My heart pounded. 5 years. It was more than I'd expected, and yet no amount of punishment could undo what she'd done. As officers led them out, Susan turned briefly toward me. Not with apology, not even regret, but confusion. Like she still didn't understand how things had come to this. Barbara whispered beside me, Justice isn't always kind, but it's fair. Outside the courthouse, the Arizona sun was blinding. Reporters shouted questions, cameras clicked, but I didn't stop. I just walked with Jason and Mia toward the parking lot, holding my daughter's hand tightly. Is it over now, Mommy? Mia asked softly. I knelt down, brushing her hair back. Yes, sweetheart. It's finally over. Jason put his arm around me. No more storms, he said. Only peace from here on out. As we drove home through the wide, golden desert, I watched the horizon stretch endlessly. Open, quiet, and bright. For the first time in my life, the future didn't feel like something to survive. It felt like something I could finally live. 2 months later, the desert heat had softened into spring warmth. The chaos of that night felt like a distant echo, something that had happened to another version of me. But every morning, when I helped Mia change the bandage on her arm, I was reminded that some scars fade slowly, even when they don't stay on the skin. Mia was getting better, stronger each day. She'd started smiling again. Not the forced kind, but the real, bright ones that reached her eyes. Therapy had helped her open up little by little. The counselor said she was healing faster than most kids would after something like that. She's resilient, she told me. That comes from you. I wasn't sure if that was true. I still had nights where I'd wake up shaking, hearing the sound of that pot clattering, the scream that followed. But when I saw my daughter laughing again, I told myself it was worth everything. Every bruise, every courtroom, every heartbreak. Barbara and Charles had become our strongest support. They treated Mia like their own, taking her for ice cream, helping with homework, and making our home feel like a real family again. Jason often said that his parents were the reason we hadn't fallen apart completely. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the red Arizona hills, Jason and I sat on the porch, watching Mia paint in the yard. Her small easel was set up near the fence, her brush moving carefully over the canvas. "Look at her," Jason said quietly. "You'd never guess she went through what she did." I nodded. "She's stronger than both of us." He smiled, slipping his arm around my shoulders. "You know, I used to think strength meant never breaking down. But watching you this year, I think real strength is getting up again, even when the world tries to crush you." His words warmed me more than the evening sun. For a long time, I'd felt ashamed of being unloved by my own mother, ashamed that I hadn't protected Mia sooner. But slowly, I was learning to forgive myself. A few weeks later, Mia's school announced an art competition. The theme was light after darkness. When she brought home the flyer, her eyes were shining. "Mom, can I join?"
Of course, I said.
"That theme was made for you." She spent days working on her painting. Every afternoon, I'd find her sitting near the window, sunlight spilling across her desk, her brush moving in steady strokes. She wouldn't let me see it until it was finished. On the day of the competition, we all went together, Jason, Barbara, Charles, and me. The school gym buzzed with parents and teachers admiring the displayed artwork. I watched Mia set her painting on the easel, her face glowing with pride and a little nervousness. When the curtain lifted, I finally saw it. It showed a woman standing in front of a child, shielding her from a wave of fiery red, like liquid flame, while behind them, a bright golden light broke through dark clouds. At the bottom, in small letters, she'd written, "For Mom.
You protected me."
I couldn't breathe for a moment. My chest tightened, my eyes stung. Jason slipped his hand into mine, whispering, "She's talking about that night." "I know," I murmured, tears falling freely. But she turned it into art, not anger. When the judges announced the winners, Mia's name was called for first place. She ran up, her smile wide and bright. The whole gym clapped, and Barbara's voice cracked with emotion as she said, "That girl's going to do big things one day." Afterward, as we left the school, the sky was streaked in soft orange and pink, the kind of Arizona sunset that looked like forgiveness painted across the horizon. Mia held her little gold ribbon in one hand and her painting in the other. "Mom," she said, "do you think Grandma Susan will ever say sorry?" I paused, glancing at her gentle eyes. "Maybe," I said softly, "but we don't need her sorry to move forward. We already did." She nodded, thoughtful. "Then I'll just keep painting." I smiled. That's the best way to heal. As we reached home, the porch light flickered on. Barbara had cooked dinner, and Charles was setting the table. The smell of fresh bread and herbs filled the house, a home that finally felt peaceful. When I tucked Mia into bed that night, she handed me her sketchbook. On the first page, she'd drawn a small family, a mother, a father, grandparents, and a little girl holding a paintbrush. Above them, she'd written in neat letters, "Some families are born from love, not blood." I kissed her forehead. "That's beautiful, sweetheart." "Because it's true," she murmured, already drifting to sleep. I turned off the light and stood by the door, watching her breathe. For years, I'd chased acceptance from the people who'd never given it. I'd begged for love from those who only knew control. But now, standing in that quiet room filled with warmth and safety, I finally understood. I didn't need their approval anymore. My mother's hatred didn't define me. My daughter's courage did. Outside, the desert wind carried the scent of night flowers through the open window. For the first time, the silence didn't hurt. It felt sacred, like peace earned, not given. I closed my eyes and whispered to the darkness. "We made it, Mia. We finally made it." And somewhere in that stillness, it felt like the world finally whispered back, "Yes, you did." Thank you for watching the story until the end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional and powerful stories every week. Your support helps us bring more true-to-life stories that inspire, heal, and remind us of the strength found in love and justice. Stay connected, and see you in the next story.